Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar on Unlocking Innovation. I'm thrilled to have you join us today as we explore the question, where do great ideas come from? If you're attending our last webinar on Mastering the Innovation Funnel, you might recall that we emphasized the importance of starting with a wealth of ideas, at least 20, to ensure we're not just betting on the first concepts that come to mind, but on those with the highest potential. We discussed how to refine and select the most promising ideas through a structured process. If you missed the funnel webinar, as we call it, please look for the recording on our LinkedIn channel. Today, we're taking a step back to address a foundational question that precedes even the innovation funnel. Where do great ideas come from? This question is crucial whether you're starting from scratch or looking to expand your pool of ideas because you might not have enough high quality concepts yet, or you need your current ideas to compete with fresh ones to ensure you're backing the best possible initiatives. So let's dive right in. One of the first places we can look for great ideas is within our own company. For example, let's start with our own team. The team is your first and most valuable resource. But it's not just about casual conversations. It's about deep, intentional dialogues that uncover insights you might not be aware of. While this might seem obvious, it's often overlooked. Let me share a personal anecdote. At one of our portfolio companies, we noticed that while sales were steady, innovation has stalled. We decided to host a series of in-depth interviews with team members from various departments: sales, customer service, research and development. In one session, a customer service representative shared that clients often asked about integrating our product with a popular third-party tool. This insight hadn't reached management before. Recognizing this opportunity, we developed an integration that not only satisfied existing customers, but also attracted new ones from the third-party tool's use base. The key takeaway here is that sometimes groundbreaking ideas are nestled in the everyday experiences of your team members. By fostering an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing insights, you can unlock innovations that might otherwise go unnoticed. Our team isn't our only asset, though, of course. We have other resources we can leverage: our customer base, brand equity, intellectual property, and existing partnerships. So let me share a case study from a multinational consumer goods company we work with. They wanted growth beyond geographic expansion. Their products were sold in third-party stores, giving them very little visibility into how customers used the products. By interviewing end customers, we uncover unmet needs, real problems that could be addressed with new value propositions. We had them create a digital platform, something completely different from what they were known for. It wasn't a physical product and didn't rely on their traditional retail channels. Instead, we leveraged one of their greatest assets, their customer base. So the new product was completely different from their existing offerings, but it was aimed at the same customer's base, because in fact the idea for the new product came directly from their existing customers. So this allowed them to launch the product quickly and acquire over 20,000 users within weeks at almost zero cost. Interestingly, as a side note, they chose not to use their well-known brand for this new venture, opting instead to test the concept independently by creating a new brand and launching the initiative as a separate entity, effectively a spin-off startup. This allowed them to avoid the risk of using their established brand to run experiments that consumers might have criticized if they were not successful. The fear of putting your brand at risk is quite common, and using a spin-off startup is a practical way to mitigate that risk. So this approach allowed them to iterate quickly without impacting their core brand. Now, circling back to what we were saying earlier, The key insight here is that sometimes your greatest assets are underutilized. By reimagining how you use them, you can create new value propositions that propel your business forward. Here's another example that highlights the power of reaching out to our customers, but this time with a focus on asking the right questions. One client, a different one, believed that they knew their customers really well. Sales were strong and feedback was positive. However, when we conducted interviews with clients and asked, what challenges keep you up at night? We discovered issues unrelated to our client's offering, yet aligned with their expertise. Customers loved the product, but struggled with financing options. The product was fine, but they couldn't pay for it. So innovation in that case came from developing flexible payment solutions, significantly enhancing customer satisfaction and loyalty. So similarly to the previous example, we're working with the same clients, but with a new, radically different value proposition and business model. The difference is that in this case, instead of asking customers what they wanted, expecting them to tell us what to build, that would be too easy, right? We asked them what they're trying to achieve. And we came up with something potentially very disruptive from our client's perspective. This approach aligns with the so-called jobs to be done methodology, which shifts the focus from products to the underlying needs and goals of our customers. So now let's revisit the idea of leveraging your assets. We're already talking about leveraging your team and your clients. Now let's explore leveraging your distribution channels and partners. We work with a Latin American credit insurance company. This is another example. And our client wanted to expand internationally, but faced regulatory barriers. Ultimately, we had them create a cybersecurity insurance company in Europe. So cybersecurity is a booming industry, and our initial validation showed that Europe was the right market for this specific venture. At first glance, this might seem like a big leap from credit insurance in Latin America to cybersecurity in Europe. However, our client already had established relationships with partners in Europe who were active in the cybersecurity space. By leveraging these existing relationships, the distribution channels, we were able to prepare a go-to-market strategy that significantly reduced both risk and investment. So the first takeaway of the day is a creative look at your current assets might lead the way to very innovative ideas. Let me add one more thing. I use the real estate industry as an example. Imagine breaking down the entire value chain from property ownership to financing, permits, construction, buying and selling, and finally property usage. Each of these steps represents an opportunity to identify problems, innovate, and add value. For instance, in the financing stage, there is an opportunity to tokenize properties using blockchain technology and raise funds through crowdfunding. In the property usage stage, you could think about building communities where Gen Zs live and work together using shared spaces and leveraging social apps or sensors to enhance the living experience. So by zooming out and analyzing the entire system, you can find opportunities where others might not be looking. The point here is that you might be a specialist in one vertical, and because of that, you develop narrow vision. But in reality, your understanding of the whole value chain is still probably very significant. And you have assets like connections, for example, that you can leverage. So even if you're attacking a different vertical of your value chain, you're more likely to innovate than a startup that is starting completely from scratch, or even an established company that might suffer from the same narrow vision problem. So it's important to zoom out or raise our heads. So I encourage you to map out your industry's value chain and ask yourself, first, where are the friction points? Second, what steps are most time-consuming or costly? And third, where is technology underutilized? The key takeaway here is that by systematically analyzing the value chain, you can uncover hidden opportunities that can lead to impactful innovations. Innovation often starts with rethinking familiar processes from a new point of view. Now, I'd like to discuss one of my favorite strategies, open innovation. In simple terms, open innovation means working with startups to leverage their innovation. Startups are still the number one threat, no matter what industry you are in. Their agility, combined with zero fear of failure, are the reasons why real disruption usually has a startup behind it rather than a big organization. But instead of looking at startups as enemies, let's embrace them and use them. Okay, so why embrace open innovation? First, by working with startups, you can learn about emerging trends and how new technologies are being applied in a much faster way. Second, startups can help solve internal problems that your company might not have the resources or expertise to address. And third, investing in startups can open new verticals, industries, or markets. You can test new value propositions within your own market, maybe within your own user base, without interfering with your current offer. Or vice versa, you can leverage startups to tap into new markets or geographies before making bold moves with your brand. Open innovation allows you to stay agile and tap into new opportunities that may not exist within your own walls. Let me know in the comments if this is something you would be interested in discussing further. And we will be happy to make a dedicated webinar about open innovation. Let's switch gears for a second and talk about how we frame problems in a way that sparks creativity. One of the most effective methods is the how might we exercise. This approach assumes that the problem is solvable and focuses on finding solutions rather than dwelling on obstacles. The classic example here is the Procter & Gamble's Cold soap from the 1970s. At the time, they were trying to create a product to compete with Colgate's Irish Spring, a soap known for its refreshing qualities and green stripes. Initially, the Procter & Gamble team was focused on how to create a better green stripe soap. However, after struggling for months without success, they sought help from Min Bazadur, a creative manager at P&G. Bazadur led a session with the team where he challenged them to rethink their approach. Instead of asking, how might we create a better green soap, he asked them to consider, why do we need a better green soap? This simple shift in perspective prompted the team to redefine the problem. They realized that their goal wasn't to make a green soap. It was to make a soap that made people feel more refreshed. So the key question became, how might we create a more refreshing soap? So by reframing the problem, the team opened up new possibilities. They generated over 200 ideas, eventually leading to the creation of Cold soap, which had swirly blue stripes and evoked a refreshing coastal feeling. This example demonstrates the power of asking the right questions. By changing the focus from incremental improvements to a broader consumer-centered goal, Procter & Gamble, in this historical example, was able to create a product that not only competed with Irish Spring, but also redefined the category. The how might we exercise forces us to think creatively about solutions, even for challenges that seem straightforward, and it remains a powerful tool for innovation used even nowadays by companies like Google and Facebook. But not everyone agrees with always starting with a problem. Some critics argue that focusing too much on solving known issues can lead to mundane, consensus-driven outcomes. They suggest that if you focus too much on existing problems, you might miss the opportunity for more radical or disruptive innovation. And I like this perspective because it reminds us why innovation is such a challenge. It's not a one-size-fits-all process. It's not as simple as finding a methodology and blindly applying it. You will have to figure out what makes sense for you and your company, potentially testing or combining many ideas that you come across. In any case, the discussion about incremental innovation versus disruptive innovation is very interesting. Understanding where your idea falls on the innovation spectrum can guide your strategy. Let's clarify some terminology. Basically, there are two main types of innovation: incremental innovation and disruptive innovation. Incremental innovation usually happens when we start by looking at our current assets or products. This is the most natural way to innovate, by taking what we already have and thinking about how we can make it better. When we reach out to our team or customers for ideas, as we mentioned before, statistically, we often end up with incremental innovation. The challenge with this approach is that it often limits or biases us to focus on improvements of what already exists. And we might miss the opportunity to think bigger and disrupt the status quo. Think about coming out with something groundbreaking like the iPad, for example. It requires much more than just interviewing customers. It's hard to imagine Apple's clients asking for an iPad. Developing such a product requires vision and a willingness to take significant risks. So, on the other hand, disruptive innovation is often triggered by a new vision, one where you forget what you know and you think freely. This type of innovation challenges you to question the status quo and imagine entirely new ways of solving problems. It requires us to let go of what's familiar and explore what's possible, even if it feels risky. But we can go beyond these two typical categories, incremental and disruptive innovation, and use a more nuanced approach, if you want. Let's consider these two factors. What is the impact of our innovation on the business model? Are we using the same business model we have been using, or are we creating a new one? On the other hand, what is the impact on technology? Meaning, are we leveraging current tech, or are we creating new tech? By crossing these two axes, we get four types of innovation. Routine innovation, that uses existing technology and applies it to an existing business model. Disruptive innovation, that combines existing technology in a completely new way to create an entirely new business model. Radical innovation, that leverages new technology but applies it within an existing business model. And architectural innovation, that applies new technology to create a new business model. Let's look at Amazon as an example of a company that has innovated across all these types. Routine innovation involves making continuous improvements to existing products or services. For Amazon, this is evident in the ongoing enhancements to their product recommendation algorithms. These small incremental changes enhance the customer experience without fundamentally altering Amazon's business model. Disruptive innovation at Amazon can be seen with Amazon Web Services, AWS. Originally, Amazon had massive server capacity to support its e-commerce business. By offering this excess capacity as a service, they disrupted the cloud computing market. AWS revolutionized cloud infrastructure, making it accessible to companies of all sizes. They took existing technology and turned it into a completely new service, fundamentally changing the market. Radical innovation, on the other hand, at Amazon, is exemplified by Amazon Prime Air, their drone delivery service. While the business model, which is delivery, remains the same, the technology is entirely new. Few companies had seriously considered using drones for mass delivery, but Amazon pushed the boundaries and created something revolutionary. Architectural innovation is evident with Amazon Studios, which disrupted the traditional TV and movie production industry. This was not just a new service or a minor adjustment to their existing model. It was an entirely new business. Amazon had to develop new technological competencies and completely step outside their e-commerce roots. Today, Amazon Studios produces award-winning films and series showcasing their ability to innovate beyond their core business. Understanding these different types of innovation can help us assess our portfolio of ideas and consider where we might want to focus our efforts. Are we spending too much time on incremental innovation? Well, maybe we should consider allocating resources to explore more disruptive or radical innovations. In conclusion, we have explored various ways to generate great ideas, from leveraging our internal assets like our team, customers, and partnerships, to stepping back and analyzing the entire value chain of our industry, to embracing open innovation and collaborating with external partners. We have discussed the importance of how we frame problems and the power of the how might we method. We consider whether to start with problems or possibilities, and we've examined different types of innovation. The key takeaway today is that innovation isn't a linear path. It's a dynamic process that requires curiosity, courage, and collaboration. Whether we're making incremental improvements or pioneering disruptive technologies, the key is to foster an environment where ideas can flourish and being systematically evaluated. I encourage you to take what you learned today and apply it within your organization. Start conversations with your team, reconnect with your customers in a deeper way, map out industry's value chain, explore partnerships outside your company walls, and reframe your challenges using the how might we framework. Remember, the future belongs to those who are willing to question the status quo and embrace the possibilities of what could be. Thank you for joining me, and I'm excited to see what great ideas you will generate next. Feel free to reach out if you have questions or want to discuss how we can help your organization innovate. Let's go out and create the next wave of innovation together. See you.